you want wine?
Maybe a glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're live. Mm-hmm. So let's start at the start. Let's start about how Strange Little Cat, the project, began. Maybe the idea.
In the school I made 3 short movies, and 2 of them have also been chamber pieces. And so actually at the beginning of the project there was the idea or the question, how could it work to make a chamber piece with a very, very minimal plot? And how could I manage, or how could we manage to make a chamber piece where the audience doesn't lose the interest? That's the important question. And so at the beginning there was this question, and then the interest of having a static camera and having a choreography of characters. That was the other formal interest. And then there was just one image. I wanted to have a person sleeping in a room and a cat scrubbing at the door and a person watching the scrubbing cat. And so that was the first concrete image, which was like the first image out of which I wanted to go further. And then there was that workshop with Béla Tarr. And so actually there were many things at the beginning, and then yes.
It's always been the idea of making a feature-length movie with very little time cuts, and like the question of how to not lose the interest when it's kind of this real-time storytelling. Yeah.
And what was Béla Tarr's role, and was he encouraging of it?
He often has, or he had workshops at the school, and then he comes with literature. That year we made The Strange Little Cat. He came with a text from Kafka, and then we could make a very freely adaptation of any text of Kafka, and then I've chosen the
Metamorphosis.
The Metamorphosis. And now I would not say that it's an adaptation of the Metamorphosis, but it just began, it was just in the Metamorphosis, a singing car. In the Metamorphosis it's like the family and the social room of the kitchen and the isolated room of the back, Gregor Samsa. And so those aspects, those family, make a portrait of a family, that was... but actually, Béla Tarr came 1 month having the idea of making a personal and very freely adaptation. And then I wrote the script before, and with him I just spoke about the camera position, about the cast, about the look of the apartment. Actually, we never spoke about abstract things or about the script, but very concrete, only very sensual and concrete things. And the work was speaking about the apartment, speaking about the not the characters, but the actors. Yeah.
And what was the influence of trying to minimize the amount of cuts or edits throughout the film that you were mentioning? Where did that come from? What is your interest in minimizing that?
Actually, there's like a basic interest of me to have like the montage and the mise en scène. And my interest is having like a static camera and using the filmic means in a very economic way. So I don't like to have many cuts, and I like the idea of controlling the very simple filmic means and decide where to cut, and not using them too much, because that's very basic interest of me. And I like to have like a dance of rhythm, of movements, to decide here is stillness, here is movement, or here when there's that cut and those characters, and because of the cut they're looking each other, so I can make it more intensive with the cut and the two characters are watching each other. And there's just that interest of mise en scène and montage. And thanks of the mise en scène, we don't have to cut too much.
And would that also include objects or people that are moving that are then filmed in stasis, as you say, like the montage you have of objects, especially like the helicopter, the bottle that we know as moving objects, but then or the moth. Yeah. What is the interplay between objects that move and then when you isolate them in a kind of inventory of stasis?
There are those periods in that movie where we just see those objects you've spoken about, and I like the idea because when there's the camera image, then you always focus something, and what I like is focusing something which actually is not in the focus of the film. So putting something in the center which actually has nothing to do really with the story. So it's like having a main character or characters which aren't important. I like to go to the characters which aren't important and putting them in the center. Here, when I put all those objects in the center, it's like a museum still life. Does that word exist?
Yeah.
Like a museum still life, and that's also an interest. I like when there's the protagonism, when it's like moving. Here in that period of the film, that person is the main character, then the protagonism, it walks away, and now here that character is in the center. I don't like when something that has to do with plot or storyline. I don't like when characters or things are slave of the plot. I like when things can just very freely flow, and I like when things aren't a slave of that storyline and everything has to serve because of the plot and storyline.
There's a kind of power dynamic too as well, like the characters when they tell those monologues that then you cut to a representation of what they're talking about. It can be because they're kind of overtaking the conversation, or it could be because they're trying to and no one's really listening to them. How did you decide which characters get the monologues, which don't, how you're going to cut away to representing them?
Actually, I think first I knew what's the content of the monologues. I knew that there's that orange peel thing, and I knew that there's situation with the cinema, with the person's putting his leg on. So I knew the scenes which I wanted to make this strange flashback. And then I just gave them to certain characters where it felt right. But actually those decisions rather were intuitive.
Yeah.
And as you said that they speak with each other, but there's not really a communication.
Yeah.
That was a little bit also a certain meaning of it. Somebody speaks, a monologue speaks extremely much, but and often to speak, it's like I speak, you speak, we have a communication, and we get to each other. So the language links us, and I wanted to use or try to use language, not that two characters are linked, but that the language isolates one person, and that character is even more isolated because the language doesn't manage to link them. So that was a little bit the idea, using those monologues with the language, isolating the characters and making a certain loneliness then.
And is that a component of the choreography as well? Like, is the choreography of the different bodies moving, does that also reflect a non-communication, or is it more of like everything's moving in tandem, like it's moving like a unit would?
Maybe it's also a little bit that choreography is sometimes a little bit like molecules. Like the characters are like molecules flowing around, dancing around. Sometimes they quickly touch each other. It's also a little bit like that. But actually the main important thing of the choreography is, because of the grace of the choreography, I can control when something is on screen or off screen, when text is spoken in the image, when it's just without a body, just the text, or when I can see the head, and when I see the back. So grace of the choreography, the bodies are moving, and so I can, yes, control on screen and off screen.
What are the suggestions of off-screen space? I mean, you can hear it sometimes. Sometimes you can just know that you're not seeing something, that's a space that you don't have access to because the camera does not move. How did that kind of power dynamic play out, like the action in the camera and the action away from the camera?
What is like the sense of having texts off screen?
Yeah.
Sometimes, because I think the film is like an everyday film, but it's a stylized everyday film. It's not a little bit artificial, not so naturalistic. And when text is without the body, then it has a more abstract degree, because then it's just the words without the body. So it's a little bit more, I think it could be more abstract. And then it's rather just a sentence in the audiovisual world of the film. And yes, it's like having the intuition or the feeling, how realistic do I want to have the sentences? Those monologues you've spoken about, there the speaking persons become like a voiceover. Then it's like the voice itself becomes like a speaking body. And yes, it's like using language in different degrees of
Stylizing, yeah. And all of this is interesting to me, that it's all kind of in that first shot almost, or the first couple shots. I mean, you have the cat scratching at the door, is that space that there's no access to, and it's a kind of inability to get to a space that you want to, kind of like when the camera's not actually picking up on the action. But you also have Clara's cry, which you hear but you don't see right away, and you don't really know what it is at first. And then all of this is kind of characterized as being nuts or crazy, like that's the accusation, like the joking accusation that happens. And I'm curious, when you were building the film, did you want to kind of cue the spectator immediately as to like some of the themes or devices that would be used in those first few shots?
Do you mean that if I wanted to show like the rules of the film or the language of the film or the character of the film rather quickly?
Yeah.
I think so, because I once made the short movie and another one, a short movie, and there I had the feeling that the spectators, the audience, had certain problems entering in the movie, because in that movie there are certain rules or certain things which are not so normal. And I think that it's very important to showing the rules very quickly, so that the persons just know with what they have to do. For me it was important to starting quickly, and that they know quickly that it's not a conventional movie, it's not a normal movie, that it's a little bit strange. I think, yeah. To show the rules very quickly.
The strangeness, it seems like it kind of builds as the film goes along, and it feels like maybe the strangest scene is the ending. Like there's the feeling that there is something almost like a horror film, like you're expecting something to happen, maybe not not something big to happen, but something negative to happen. But I don't really know why I felt that, but especially as it got darker in the space, you feel kind of dread. What is the relationship between the film's visuals and the kind of tension that a viewer might feel as the film goes along?
I think the tension is also, I think that's a rather real-time chamber piece, and we really are in that flat, sometimes going out very shortly, but I think the tension you speak about is one consequence of being like in that flat with that certain passive-aggressive mood, and I think also that the characters are a little bit unberechenbar.
Not predictable.
Not predictable,
yeah.
and there's a certain aggression under everything, and that pressure, tension always could like explode, but never really explodes. And yes, I think it's like something between the passive aggression and the fact that there's no exploding. It's like, what is called in the kitchen, there's those cups where you put the thing on it, and then there's a big pressure inside, and the vegetable cooks quicker because of the Dampfkochtopf.
Oh, a steamer. Is it the steamer?
It's
yeah.
steamer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a steamer.
Yeah.
And actually you could put the button to let the heat out, the pressure out, but we didn't put the button, so the pressure never comes out. Until the end, the pressure never came out. Yeah.
There's something visually happening too. I mean, earlier in the film, there are a lot of bright colors, and especially some of the flashbacks are pretty vividly presented visually. And then by the end, as it starts to get darker, there's something about how you become accustomed to those bright images and how everything's getting a little harder to distinguish what's going on. And there's like a bright, I think, red light near the end that I remember. Or like, how did you settle upon the coloring of the film, which seems very distinct?
Actually, it was one, because as I said, we didn't have really a story.
Yeah.
Rather, we had several very minimalistic stories, plots, but I would say it's rather a non-plot movie than a plot movie. And one formal aspect was like the journey of light, that it starts with the rather white or a little bit blue but rather white daily light, and then it's like the journey to the artificial warmer light of the evening, and so in the evening there's like mixed light, so sometimes a little bit blue with yellow and red, and then when it becomes, yes, when the day, the Saturday goes to the end, then it's just white from the moon and yellow, red from the artificial lamps.
And that kind of cues time as a spectator. I found myself always thinking about the time, like, is it going to be in real time? Are there going to be little elisions where it jumps ahead a bit? And it's hard to kind of keep track of that. And the light is one way that you're, I think, cued to constantly thinking about time. Is that an important component of the film?
Yeah, it was really, we wanted to have a real time with just about between 4 or 6 ellipses, time jumps.
Yeah.
But actually it's about 6 hours, which we played in 72 minutes. So it's the illusion of real time with 4 jump cuts, but actually it's
compressed.
compressed.
Yeah.
It's compressed real time.
Rhythmically, how did you decide when to use the music? It's a very evocative piece of music that kind of you develop a relationship with as a viewer, and then when it comes in, it kind of punctuates those moments. How did you decide where to, or how did you even decide to only use really the one piece, more or less?
Actually, during the writing of the script, I already wrote the scenes the way that I knew where the music could be. And I don't like movies which use the music for emotionalizing emotional scenes, because often emotional scenes have even more emotional music. So I think that that's then, for me, that are wrong feelings. And I like when music is used not in an abusing way. So I rather used it like to make certain chapters. And in that movie, I think the music is also a little bit emotionalizing. It's a little bit of dramatic music, a wonderful music, I think. But it was in moments which actually they are not emotional.
It's like the punctuation of those object montages
Yes,
as
it's
well.
like punctuation.
Yeah.
Like putting a point or putting a comma.
Yeah.
A comma. Also like the pictures of the objects. That's for me also a form of punctuation.
Now, would it be to reflect on what has happened, or to kind of prepare the viewer for what's about to come, I guess?
Yeah, as you said, to like digest the things that happened, or like having a certain little breakdown, not where not the brain has to work always, but also the heart can a little bit beat or something like that. It's rather to digest the things that happened than to prepare them for the things that will happen, will come.
And also, as you said before, that we have the platform of putting things that were at the periphery only to like center them, like not like the hierarchy of classical storytelling, where the values are clearly defined, that you have time to also like center things that only had like a peripheral presence.
Yeah.
With the music montage sequences.
Yeah. For example, we have seen the person which throws the peels on the floor, orange peels, and then later we see the orange peels. So it's like showing those objects. The extremely linear time happenings, which is very linear, gets a certain non-linear quality. And that was also a little bit something which interested me. The non-linear things which can happen in a radical linear choreography or chronology.
Like the shopping list or the moth, the things that you get.
The shopping list?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the shopping list.
And then you only see it later. It's almost like you may have forgotten it and
Yeah.
then you return to it in a way.
It's a little bit like the shopping list is also like a character. First there's the shopping list, then next time the shopping list is like
Crumpled up, yeah.
and then we see the traces of the scratches, and then Clara has drawn something on it. And so it's like the story of the light, story of the objects, and as if the animals, the objects, and the characters has the same value, or the same value for being presented the same way, for being respected the same way.
You mentioned the animals. They operate at a level that's kind of in between the characters and the audience. Like the characters all know one another. The audience is trying to figure out what the relationships are, what the story is, how they know one another. And then you have the animals that are there, but they also have a relationship that's a little detached from the individuals. And you kind of, as a spectator, learn things by how they're interacting with either the dog or the cat especially. And it's interesting that you would choose that as the title, like the level that's a little detached from the actual interactions that are going on. How did you come to call it the Strange Little Cat?
Actually, that was also at the beginning rather an intuitive thing. I just wrote the treatment, and I wanted to have a title or a name for the treatment. So I had the Strange Little Cat, and then it just stayed till the end. And actually, it's not a movie about a cat. The cat is also there, but it's not more important than the other things. But I think important is that the word strange is there because of the confidence. So often you have a confidence with the reality and everything is normal, but when an alien comes on the world, for the alien everything is maybe strange. And it was a little bit like an alien comes on the world and looks one day in the life of a family and everything is a little bit strange. Like in the surrealism, where you break the confidence with the life, when you change a little thing, and then everything gets strange. So the word strange was important, and little cat. In German, das merkwürdige Kätzchen is a... There are novels, romantic novels, but it doesn't mean romantic like love story from the period of the Romanticism. And those were also a little bit surrealist. And for me, the story of the Strange Little Cat had a little bit something like that. And it also had a little bit something of a child's story, even though it's not a children's movie. But the perspective of the children is important, because there are so many children, about 3 of them. And so, because of all those aspects, I just let that title be, because I think it's a title which also has many question marks, and I just like it very much.
Little, it seems like also is that it's something that is seen as not important, but obviously, as you say, if it's a little strange, then it obviously does have a big impact. Like the cat and the dog seem to always be, they're always being brushed away or ignored in some way. And maybe that speaks to the passive aggressiveness you were talking about that characterizes some of the relationships that are going on.
I think also that the animals are a little bit into that passive aggressive behavior or relationships. I think the main body of the passive aggression is the mother, but that passive aggression of the mother character spreads out a little bit to the other characters, and so then it gets a little bit a universe of passive aggression. It of course has many other aspects. It's also a funny movie. There are scenes which are also funny, but yes, the animals are also integrated in that passive-aggressive circle, like the mother who stands on the head of the cat, and that is like repeated when the little boy stands on the little hand of the cat, or when the girl takes the ball from the dog away, so that the dog suffers. It's like using the animals for Demütigung.
Humiliation, aber das ist doch Demütigung.
Ah ja.
So the moments where you do leave the flat, structurally, how did you decide when to have those happen, or and what purpose did they serve to the overall story to have those little moments away from the flat?
Actually, it was clear that the moments we've spoken about, the flashback situations, there, as it plays once in the nature, once in the cinema, and once on a balcony. So that was clear that in those moments we will leave the flat, and then the other moments was one when the morning has passed And before starting the afternoon and evening, there we wanted to leave the apartment for making the only very big punctuation. And then there, yes, it was, maybe it's the only time where we put on the button of that kitchen,
The steamer, yeah.
steamer, there we put on it a little bit.
Yeah.
And the last time we leave the flat is when Clara wants to see the rat, when there are the sparrows, and when she wants to give bread to the rat. Those were decisions, but it was also in the nature of the actions and what happened to leave at those moments the flat.
You get an idea of how these people that you as a viewer learn about through their interactions with one another. You kind of see how they interact with the world a bit. I mean, Clara, there's the boy that's trying to kind of interact with Clara, and she's not really interested in him. But then you also have the mother choosing to go to a busy cafe, but not necessarily to interact with anyone else. And I found that to be an interesting element of those. Like, how do these people that you only see together exist outside of that space that you've associated with them?
That they have an own life outside of the flat.
Yeah.
And also because the mother, after at the evening, she speaks of that restaurant she's likes so much, and we have seen it, and so we've just seen it, and for us maybe it was just an ordinary, normal restaurant, but then she speaks it and she like emotionalizes that, and that's also like a non-linear thing happening. And actually, yes, but maybe it's also interesting that the characters have a life outside, and that there is an outside, mostly because the sound was so important, and there was the window of the kitchen. We just actually, it's also the outside is very much present in the sound, because sometimes they open the window, they close it, so the outside is very much present in the sound.
There's like, it's again that on-screen, off-screen tension. Like there's the off-screen of their lives outside of the flat, and then there's also what you don't have access to inside. As you say, like, we only know that it's romanticized because she chooses to communicate that, and if she didn't, we would have no idea. And it's kind of like the dog sitting outside, like, doesn't really know what's going on in the restaurant. So I find that we're, as viewers, oscillating. We're going back and forth. Sometimes we have access, sometimes we don't, and it's happening outside, and that's a really interesting aspect of the film. I also want to talk about how did the actors, especially Clara, and you could even say the animals, how is it getting them to work within what sounds like a very precise project?
Actually, I casted everybody with the assistant director, so we didn't have an actor from the beginning. We just casted them, but I think there's not only one method to work with the actors, because they are human beings and they have so many different methods. And I wasn't the way that I have one method and I wanted to work with them that way. So there have been some actors who wanted to have a backstory, but I didn't have a backstory, but they had a backstory. And so we've spoken together and they had their story of the characters. And then other actors didn't have to have a backstory. So, okay, we didn't speak about that. I'm also fine with that. And then actually the script was only the physical actions, and we just put the camera, and then I told them where to do what, and they made it several times till it was very fluid. And then we spoke about making that quicker, making that slower, making that louder, about things like that. And Clara and the children, they didn't receive the script, and I just set them what they have to do and what they have to say. And they were a little bit like hard drives because their brain is so young. And it's like telling them once the things and then it just works. And actually, the animals, they just improvised. Only the dog, there was one animal trainee and she could work with the dog using food and using noises. And so the dog was classically conditioned. So he really could make certain walks very precisely. But the cat, the moth, and the rat, they improvised.
And how have you found the reception to the film?
Mostly appreciated the film very much.
Yeah.
Actually, till the press screening, till the world premiere, the press screening, the reactions were very, very positive. I read many interesting texts. I never would have those words or so difficult to speak about that, but actually the reactions were mostly very positive.
Yeah, we've been very surprised, even wouldn't have expected that people talk about the film in this way. Because it was also kind of a private process to develop the film, to write it, and as we didn't have the experience of already having had a film that traveled, or that has been like externalized, so it's the very first experience of having made a film that afterwards is being received and recognized. So it was really a big surprise because it felt so private, and then just immediately it got public. And it was great to also read that people really worship this work. Yeah.
And actually I thought it would be a little bit an outsider film, a freak film and an outlaw film, because for me the film is like a little freak. And I thought that many people would have problems with the film because there's not really a plot. I thought many people would have a problem, but not that many people have a problem. Maybe they don't say it.
And have you started developing your next project, or are you waiting to continue touring with this film as it goes through the festival circuit?
Actually, we just plan to write a new film, but I don't like to sit in front of the desk and the computer and then wait till something comes and having a little bit of bad mood because it doesn't flow and it's not so good. So I wait till the material comes in my head, and then when enough material is in my head, then I go to the desk, because then I don't have a passive aggression against the desk and the computer, because things are already here. And so actually now there are the first ideas and a direction, which direction it can go, but not yet so concrete, but
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you also.
Thank you.